They went into the Scottish Highlands for a quiet father-son walk and never came back. A parked car, 2 missing names, days of searching in brutal terrain, and when they were finally found, the silence was even heavier than the loss. No distress call, no warning, just a father and his 12-year-old son side by side, as if the land had simply decided not to let them go. This isn't just a tragedy, it's a mystery wrapped in stillness, and a heartbreaking reminder of how fast the wild can turn. The road into the Highlands stretched like a silver ribbon across the landscape, narrow, winding, ancient. On one side, sheer hills, moss-wrapped and towering. On the other, deep valleys that seemed to fall into silence. It was supposed to be an adventure. Tom Parry had driven those roads before. He loved them, the escape, the openness, the solitude. This time, though, was different. He wasn't alone. In the passenger seat beside him sat his 12-year-old son, Richie, hood up, eyes full of that soft excitement only kids have when they're finally doing something they've always wanted to do. They were close. You could feel it in the way they moved. No awkwardness, no space between them. Just a quiet rhythm only fathers and sons understand. Tom had been planning this hike for weeks, a 2-day trip, simple, meant to be safe, a good trail, well marked. Just them, the fresh air, and the kind of memories they'd talk about for years. But they never came home. The car was later found parked at the edge of a hill-walking path in the Scottish Highlands, quiet, untouched, waiting. They were already gone. No calls, no sightings, no panic, just absence. It's the kind of vanishing that doesn't announce itself, it creeps in like fog off the loch. First, there's silence, then concern, then fear that you can't explain, only feel in your chest. The days passed. The search began. But let's go back before the headlines, before the police tape, back to when it was just a father and son chasing the wild. Tom Parry was a quiet man by most accounts, lived in Cheshire, worked a job, took care of his family. He wasn't a thrill seeker, he didn't climb cliffs or test fate, but he valued time outdoors. He believed in the peace of high places, in letting the wind speak where words couldn't. Richie had inherited that. He was gentle, curious, the kind of boy who asked questions you didn't expect, who noticed things. Clouds, the shapes of birds, old songs on the car stereo. He wasn't a daredevil, but he trusted his dad completely. Where Tom led, Richie followed. The trip had been planned for the school break, just a few days, a father-son hill walk through the Highlands. They packed light, warm gear, food, maps, nothing extreme. They weren't trying to prove anything. Just walk, just breathe, just be together, away from everything. They left early on a quiet morning in March. The Highlands were still waking up from winter. Cold air hung low in the valleys, and snow clung to the higher peaks. Weather could shift in minutes, the way it always does in places that don't care if you're ready. No one saw them leave the car. No one watched them step onto the trail. That's part of the story's weight. No final wave, no last photo. Just the trailhead, and then nothing. Later, when police released photos of the car, it sat exactly where it should have, parked neatly at the edge of the Glen Nevis area, one of the more well-known Highland walking zones, the kind of place where dozens hike every week without incident. But something happened. Tom and Richie didn't come back. When they failed to return home, the family contacted authorities. At first, there was hope. Maybe they'd lost signal. Maybe they took a longer route. Maybe they were safe and just needed time. But hope fades fast when you're up against the mountains. Search and rescue teams were dispatched. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers, drones swept the rugged terrain. But the Highlands are vast and merciless. The hills seem to fold over themselves. Every path leads to 10 others. Fog drapes the landscape like a veil. Rain soaks everything before you can blink. What was safe an hour ago can become a trap in minutes. Still, searchers held on, because it was a father and his boy. And that kind of disappearance shakes even the most seasoned among them. What got to people most was the stillness. There were no signs of panic. No SOS markings, no abandoned gear. It was like they had stepped into the mist and never stepped back out. Days passed. The media began to report it, but cautiously. The story didn't scream headlines. There was no criminal suspect, no drama, just sadness, the kind that makes your chest tighten and your hands cold. Everyone wanted to believe they were alive. Maybe they found shelter. Maybe they were waiting to be rescued. Maybe this would end with tears of relief and grateful embraces. But nature is indifferent to hope. And somewhere beneath those ancient hills, the truth waited. The search continued. But the silence deepened. Experienced hikers began to say it out loud. If they were out there, they should have been found by now. 2 days in that terrain with no contact? Not good. Behind the scenes, the conversation shifted from when we find them to if. Still, teams didn't stop. Not then. Not yet. They knew that for every hour that passed, the likelihood of survival dropped. But it wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a promise. To try. To not give up. Not until the land told them what it had done. And eventually, it did. It was early morning when the call came in. A search team, moving through a steep ravine not far from the trailhead, spotted something. A flash of fabric against the moss-covered rocks. It was subtle, almost invisible in the low light. They radioed it in. Moments later, more teams arrived. There, in a narrow gully not marked on most maps, they found the bodies of Tom and Richie Parry, side by side. No protective shelter around them, no signs of a camp. Just 2 still figures in the cold, the wind curling gently around the curve of the land, as if even nature had paused for a moment of silence. The scene was solemn. No chaos, no trauma, just the quiet ending of 2 lives who had come looking for peace and never left. Searchers stood in silence before lifting the stretchers. One rescuer would later say it was one of the hardest recoveries of his career. Not because of the terrain, but because of Richie, his small frame. The realization that he must have followed his dad until the very end. The image stays with people. A father and son lost together in the vastness of the Highlands. The news broke later that afternoon. The headlines were respectful, but blunt. Missing father and son found dead in Scottish Highlands. And just like that, the hope was gone. But the questions weren't. What happened out there? Why had they left the trail? Had they taken a wrong turn? Slipped during bad weather? Had Tom fallen ill and Richie refused to leave his side? There was no immediate answer. The police released a statement confirming the discovery, but provided little detail. The investigation was ongoing, they said. No signs of foul play, no suspicion of anything other than tragedy. But for the family, and for many watching, the absence of detail was deafening. Because the terrain where they were found wasn't unwalkable. Challenging, yes, but not off limits. And they were close, painfully close, to safety, to a nearby path, to a line of trees that might have offered shelter. It raised a chilling possibility. Had they become disoriented in fog? Had exhaustion overtaken them at just the wrong moment? Or had they simply run out of time? For the investigators, answers were slow to form. Autopsies would take time. Toxicology reports, gear inspections, GPS tracking, none of it offered the kind of truth people were desperate for. But in the days that followed, something else happened, something small but powerful. Tributes. People who had never met Tom or Richie began leaving flowers at the trailhead. Notes, drawings. A small carved stone with a father and son etched into it, left at the base of a cairn. Others left hiking sticks, leaning them gently against the trail sign, as if to say, "You mattered, you are remembered," and still no answers. Tom was an experienced hillwalker, careful, not reckless. He knew how quickly Highland weather could turn. He had planned for it. But even the best plans don't guarantee survival. In the Scottish Highlands, conditions can shift in minutes. A clear sky can vanish beneath rolling fog. Temperatures can drop suddenly, and without visibility, even experienced walkers can find themselves lost in familiar places. But why didn't they call for help? Why wasn't there a distress signal? Searchers found their phones. No missed calls, no attempted SOS messages. It was as if they simply accepted what was coming, or never saw it coming at all. That's what cuts deepest. Not just the loss, but the quietness of it. They didn't scream, they didn't fight. They just disappeared together. And when they were found, the world was colder for it. In the following weeks, the community of Cheshire held a memorial. Hundreds came, teachers, neighbors, school friends. They remembered Richie's kindness, his quiet questions, his love for exploring. They remembered Tom's steady presence, his calm voice, his devotion to being a good father. One speaker said, "They went into the Highlands seeking peace, and though we wish they had returned, maybe, in some way, they found it." The investigation continued in the background, quietly, respectfully, but no new revelations came. There was no foul play, no accident with witnesses, no clue that changed anything. Just a pair of footprints that led into the mist and never came back. The Scottish Highlands have seen tragedies before. People get lost, weather turns, paths vanish under snow or cloud, but this case felt different, heavier, because it was a father and his boy, because it felt too gentle to be so final, because it could have been anyone. And that's what makes it linger. Not just in memory, but in the air along the trailhead, in the hush between wind gusts. A story that unfolded in silence, that ended with an unanswered question whispered to the hills. What happened out there? Only the land knows. And it isn't speaking. The trail is still there. Walkers pass it every day, some with maps, some with dogs, some with children of their own. They pass by the same patch of road where Tom Parry parked his car, where the journey began. Most of them don't stop, they don't know, but some do. They slow down, look out at the hills, let the silence settle in, and maybe for just a moment, they feel it. The ache of a story that doesn't shout, but hums low, just beneath the surface. What happened to Tom and Richie wasn't loud. It wasn't made for headlines or theories or blame. It was quiet, a slow fading, the kind of tragedy that slips through cracks and leaves no clear answer. And maybe that's what makes it hurt so much more. Because Tom wasn't careless, and Richie had his whole life ahead of him. And still, something took them. Not a person, not an accident you can easily point to, but the landscape itself. The timing, the cold, the way the mountains can wrap around you and make you forget how far you've come. In the days after the bodies were found, a photo surfaced. It was from a trip the year before. Father and son on a smaller hill, grinning, wind in their faces, arms thrown around each other. Not posed, just happy. Two people connected in a way most never get to be. That's the version the family holds on to, not the ending, the bond. It's hard to explain to people who've never hiked in places like the Highlands. The silence can feel spiritual. The wind isn't just noise, it speaks. The sky bends closer, and the earth feels older. It's the kind of place where you go to feel small in the best way. But it's also the kind of place that doesn't forgive mistakes, not even small ones. The coroner's findings were respectful, but limited. Cause of death, exposure. Likely due to a combination of getting off trail, bad weather, and fatigue. No signs of violence, no signs of suffering, but no one really believed it ended in a single moment. Most believe they kept walking as long as they could, Tom leading, Richie trusting, and at some point, when there was no more walking left to do, they stopped. Together. And if there's any comfort in this story, it's that. They were found side by side. Even in their final hour, they were together. For the rest of us, all that remains are questions. Could they have been saved? What if the weather had held one day longer? What if someone had passed them on the trail? What if they'd taken the other fork? We ask these things because we want control, we want meaning. But sometimes nature doesn't offer those. Sometimes it just reminds us how fragile we are. A single wrong turn, a missed step, a heavy fog, and the world changes, forever. But still, in that heartbreak, there's something beautiful. Because Tom Parry didn't die alone, and Richie Parry didn't vanish into nothing. They had each other, all the way through. And maybe, in a world full of so much noise, so much distraction, so much disconnection, that kind of closeness is rare and sacred. Today, there is no plaque where they were found, no trail renamed, just two names, spoken gently by those who knew them. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the silence is their memorial. And maybe in the hush of the Highlands, if you walk far enough and listen long enough, you'll hear them. Not in fear, not in pain, but in peace. In the end, they were found side by side. A father and son, not lost, but claimed. The Scottish Highlands gave no explanation, no warning, no reason, only silence. And in that silence, a bond deeper than words. Tom and Richie Parry didn't leave behind answers. They left behind something more powerful, a reminder that life can change in a moment, and that some moments, even in tragedy, are filled with love. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, because these stories matter, and the people we lose deserve to be remembered.